Curt Cignetti is dominating college football. He's the best coach in college football. He's poised to win a national championship Monday night against Miami. Welcome to another episode of the Bamateur Hour. I am Bama John. Today is Saturday, January 17th, 2026, in the year of our Lord. We have over 8,900 subscribers to the YouTube channel and growing, headed to 10,000 and beyond. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and follow. Who is Curt Cignetti? It is important to understand who he is, why he's such an important figure in college football currently in this landscape, and what that means for Alabama, and what is Alabama going to need to do to raise its game to compete with Cignetti and the likes of what Cignetti's rise in college football is going to do to the college football program. So let's look at Cignetti. We already did part one, and we talked about his ties to the coaching greats, his legacy, what his philosophy and what the Cignetti way is rooted in. Today, we're going to do just look at his rise in coaching, where he came from, and what's likely to follow. All right, he is a late bloomer. I call him the late bloomer who's blossoming in Bloomington and is now currently the best college football coach, bar none. I think he's the best. Again, I'll state it again. He's the best college football coach. If I could pick one coach to take over the program at Alabama, I would pick him. I would want him. I love everything that he does, the way he coaches, the way he recruits, the way he develops, just his overall approach to the program. Previous to that, I thought Kirby Smart was the best coach, but I think Siggs passed him. And prior to that, it was Nick Saban. All right, let's look at his career. Born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He has Pennsylvania roots. He has ties to West Virginia, and he also has ties to Alabama. And those are the three things where he's rooted in football. Son of college football Hall of Fame coach Frank Cignetti Sr. He played quarterback. Curt Cignetti played quarterback at West Virginia. His father was the coach there. That's how he ended up at West Virginia. He finished his career there, and in 1982, graduated and went into coaching. And he is a coaching lifer. He is coached all his life. That's his only profession. He went into the family profession, and that's how it rolled. So he had a 30-year plus apprenticeship in coaching, spent 30 years as an assistant before becoming a head coach. He did the long journey, the long grind to becoming a head coach. And then he rose through the ranks from D2 to D1 lower level programs to finally taking over at Indiana. As an assistant, he was quarterback. He was on the offensive side of the ball. He was a quarterback's coach. He was a receivers coach. He was a recruiting coordinator. He was a program manager, but he did his duty and grinded it out as an assistant at many programs in the college ranks before finally getting his first head coaching job. He had stops at Pitt, North Carolina State, and Alabama. And certainly at North Carolina State, in particular Alabama, he got to witness programs at really high levels and how they built their programs into winning D1 programs, with Alabama being the coup de grace for that. It's how his identity was shaped, how he became a detailed, demanding, and unapologetically results-oriented coach. His philosophy was formed over this long time period so that when he hit Indiana, he was a fully formed coach. He was a great coach, not a good coach, a great coach when he came into Indiana. We just didn't know it. The nation didn't know it. College football didn't know it. We didn't realize how all he had learned in his 40 years of coaching and his 12 plus years as a head coach, he was plug and play, ready to go, brought in a winning culture, brought in a winning mindset, brought in the Cignetti way, which was ready to roll. We just didn't understand it. So coaching journey begins. He goes into coaching. He becomes a life coach when he graduates, rolls through a bunch of just various coaching opportunities, and really things picked up when he went to NC State, coached under Chuck Amato, who was a Biden disciple with deep ties to Bobby Bowden. That plus his father coaching under Bobby Bowden really ties him to Bowden, the Bowden legacy. And he incorporated a lot of things that Bobby Bowden did as a coach into his philosophy. Certainly, I wouldn't call him a Bowdenite. I think he's more of a Sabanite and a more tied directly to his father and Saban than anybody else. But he certainly learned a lot about Bobby Bowden and how to win and how to recruit and how to build a team, and that you had to have great players if you're going to win at a high level. Now, what that means to acquire great players and to develop them into great players, he probably has some differences in the way that Bowden did it, but he certainly understood that he who has the best players, who are coached the best, are going to win, and you have to have great players to win. When Bowden was at NC State, he was the quarterback coach for Phillip Rivers and helped develop Phillip Rivers into an All-American at North Carolina State, and then he became on to be to have a successful long career in the NFL. He'll be up for the Hall of Fame. There's a question about whether or not he is a Hall of Fame level coach, but Phillip Rivers is a great quarterback, and Cignetti developed him. He's a developer and coach of quarterbacks, so it's no surprise that Fernando Mendoza comes under his tutelage and becomes a Heisman level caliber quarterback. And he knows offense. He knows how to coach quarterbacks. He also recruited and coached Russell Wilson. Again, another NFL All-Pro, borderline Hall of Famer, great player, and a guy that didn't fit the measurables for quarterback. If you're looking for tall, strong, athletic, Russell Wilson was not that tall, 6'4", pocket presence. Certainly athletic, but just shows his keen eye for talent, that he realized that Russell Wilson recruited him, brought him in, and he was very successful in NC State before he had to transfer to Wisconsin and finish his career there. And then he went on to a long, successful NFL career. So a lot of things happened there. Then Cignetti goes to Saban. He was there from day one when Saban walked in the door to rebuild Alabama. Saban worked under Frank Cignetti at West Virginia. So the Cignetti family had ties to Saban, and there was familiarity there. And so Saban was comfortable bringing Cignetti over from NC State, where he'd been successful as a recruiting coordinator and as a quarterbacks coach, and bringing Cignetti in to be his recruiting coordinator, and also was a position coach. So Cignetti was there. And Cignetti says his time under Saban, he got a PhD in coaching. And he credits working under Chuck Amato, who was longtime defensive coordinator for Bobby Bowden in the 90s, working under him at NC State, that he learned a lot there. But that, the tutelage and the mentoring and studying under Saban, those 4 years at Alabama, he was there when Saban built it back from when Alabama was a wreck as a program, and he came in and in 3 years took them to a national championship. In year 2, went undefeated through the regular season, lost in the SEC championship to Florida, then lost in a bowl game, but then was ready to roll when they went the next year, go undefeated, win a national championship. Then he was there during the Cam Newton year when Alabama struggled instead of repeating, which everybody thought they had a great chance to repeat his national championships, how they failed that year and had a bad year and lost multiple games. And it was a disappointment. So he was there as well to see why the program was not able to carry over after winning a national championship and come back and repeat. And he learned a lot. He doesn't talk about that year as a failure, and there's no real information out there for what he thought about that. But boy, he was at the feet of Saban, working hard, learning, grinding, and then he was ready to become a head coach and moved on from Alabama to take his first job. Let's look at his assistant jobs. This is where he went. As soon as he graduated from West Virginia, he was just in an assistant role from there on. Went to Pittsburgh, was a graduate assistant, so grinding, earning no money. 2 years at Pittsburgh, goes to Davidson, was the quarterbacks and wide receivers coach for a year, goes to Rice, has a 3-year run there at Rice, goes to Temple, brings him back to Pennsylvania, does 3 years as the quarterback coach at Temple's. And again, none of these programs, Davidson, Rice, Temple, were great programs. He was not in a blue blood program. He was coaching for the love of coaching and learning and growing, but he was not at a great program. Then he goes back to Pittsburgh again, and he's the quarterback and tight ends coach till the end of the 20th century in 99. And then in 2000, he's hired by NC State, by Chuck Amato, to be his quarterback coach, tight ends coach, and recruiting coordinator. I'm sure the Biden ties from the Cignetti family to the Biden family helped with him to land that job. But let's face it, the guy's smart, he knows offense, played quarterback, coached offense. Sure, he was well qualified to do it as well. And then he had a successful 7-year run in NC State. NC State was a very strong, successful program during that time when Curt Cignetti was there as a recruiting coordinator. Had Phillip Rivers, got him out of Alabama, got him to go to North Carolina State, developed him. He did not go to Alabama. That's interesting. And he got Russell Wilson and developed him as well. Great tenure at North Carolina State and prepared him to move over to Alabama and go in under Saban when Saban walked in that door and be the recruiting coordinator and be an offensive assistant over tight ends. And he talks about that time at North Carolina, and then it was a really time for him to grow and develop. And Phillip Rivers speaks very highly of working with Curt Cignetti, and players there had a lot. And he credits his time in Raleigh at North Carolina State to help him develop the blueprint that he uses today for his program, and how much he learned under Amato and how much he learned of the way Bobby Bowden and then Chuck Amato run programs, and just a huge development step in him. He said staying in North Carolina State, he stayed there because he thought it was a stable environment for his family. And as he had moved around every 2, 3, 4 years, it was a relief for him to stay there for basically 7 years. And while he was there, he turned down an opportunity to go to the NFL and coach with the Green Bay Packers because he wanted a little more family stability. Interesting now that he turned down the NFL then, whereas his brother Frank has had a long career in the NFL, and now he's being rumored for NFL jobs. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens with him in the offseason if he takes any NFL jobs. But he's a college lifer. He has been his whole career. And we'll see what the allure of the NFL is over the next after the end of this season during the hiring cycle for the NFL, and then what happens in future years if he's just going to be a lifer at Indiana, or whether the allure of the NFL is going to pull him away and the opportunity to go coach against the best coaches in the world at the highest level and see if he can win there, because he's proven it at every other level. We'll watch that. Next step after NC State, he goes to Alabama, and he calls it his doctorate in football. We all know what happened at Alabama. He flourished. Alabama flourished. He was successful, spearheaded the program that under Saban recruiting that rebuilt Alabama and stocked Alabama with all those NFL caliber players. So he knows talent. He knows talent. He knows player development. He knows what to look for. And there he was leading Saban's rebuilding of Alabama in a key position that can't be understated. So note that. After that, Cignetti just credits Saban as a mentor that influenced him heavily in his coaching philosophy. And if you look at his philosophy, you can see Sabanisms all over his coach speak and what he says. And I know that in his early days at Indiana University, Pennsylvania, his first head coaching job, he would refer to his days at Alabama all the time and refer to what they did at Alabama and how they won at Alabama. And after multiple years of winning, his players said, "Hey, we win here. You don't need to talk about Alabama anymore. You can talk about what you're doing here because we win here." And it's funny when he made that shift while at Indiana University, Pennsylvania, that he let go of referring to his days at Alabama because he was winning where he was, and that lesson took root. And it's funny that that resulted in "I win, Google me." That he didn't have to refer back to his success at Alabama as an assistant. He developed a long track record of winning wherever he was, and he could, with confidence, with arrogance, with pride, and with truth, make that statement and say, "I win, Google me." Well, it's true. He did. So note the Saban ties. And then finally, after being at Alabama, he was ready to become a head coach. And the head coaching offer job he got after over 27 years as an assistant was to go to Indiana University, Pennsylvania, where his dad had been a longtime legendary Hall of Fame head coach. And his dad had left the program, and the program had fallen off and was no longer winning. And they brought him in to rebuild him. And certainly his ties to that school through his dad led him to go to Indiana University, Pennsylvania. In Indiana, Pennsylvania, which is the Christmas tree capital of the world, but he took a huge pay cut. I think his pay dropped from $300,000 a year to a little bit over $130,000 a year. So he took a big risk. He took a big pay cut. He went to a low-level, low-profile job that had had a history of winning, stopped winning, and he went there to rebuild it. I'm sure the fact that his dad had been there and he had significant ties there played a lot into him going there, and his level of comfort in taking over that program and going, improving his mettle as a coach there. He was 50 at that time, and he knew it was time for him to become a head coach if that's what he wanted to do, and jump in there and do it. And he was willing to go do it his way. And he jumped in there and went to Indiana University, Pennsylvania, won big. Then he went to Elon, won big, went to James Madison, won big. And now he's at Indiana winning big. He does. I win, Google me, true. So goes to Indiana University of Pennsylvania, 6 years there. Out of the way, small town in Pennsylvania, about an hour kind of north, east, more east than north of Pittsburgh, near the New York border. And I mean, it was just a small, out of the way, low profile place. He goes in there, he turns it around. They win, and they win big. And his proof of concept that he can win, and his proof of concept of the Cignetti way, he did that there. He proved he could win. He proved he could build a program. He proved he could develop players. He proved that he had the right recipe, the right success, but he did it at a D2 level. So in 2016, after proving that he can win there, it's time to step up to the D1 level, and Elon University comes and hires him. Elon University, again, a program that none of us follow and most of us have never heard of. I know of Elon University because I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Elon is outside of Burlington, North Carolina, in that greater triangle area. So I was aware of it, but again, not a program that's on anybody's radar, and anybody would be excited to take over. As a head coach, he goes there and he builds it into a winner. And in 2 years, he revitalizes the Elon program, takes it to a winning level, and they get a playoff berth. And so there he is with this blueprint showing he can win at the D1 level. Now it's at the FCS level, but he did it. He goes in there, builds him into a winner, boom, quick turnaround. So it's a validation that his D2 level program and his methods work at the D1 level. Again, not at a Power 4 school, but at the D1 level, his formula works. He can win, building his confidence, building his proof, and building credibility. And now he's no longer a hidden gem. He's out there as a winner, and people are going, what the heck? What's this guy doing at Elon? And then James Madison comes calling, and he gets hired and goes to James Madison and spends 5 years there. He takes over the James Madison program as they go from the FBS level to the D1 FBS from the they go from the FCS level to the FBS level. So they become a group of 5 program at the true D1 level that's eligible for the college football playoffs. He is successful in going there and transitioning to that level and making sure that they're a winning program. So in his years at James Madison, they win consistently. They make deep playoff runs. They have conference success. They get multiple conference titles, and he's a proven winner. And they are winning, and he has done it. And then Indiana comes calling. So after 13 years as a head coach at 6 years at a D2 program at Indiana University, Pennsylvania, and 7 years, 2 at Elon, 5 at James Madison, Indiana comes calling. Indiana is seeking a winner. They're seeking something different. That's the best coach they could find to hire, and they hired. And Cignetti takes the program. He's excited about it. He's now in the big times. He's now been hired into a D1 program at the Power 4 level, but it is Indiana, the losingest program in Power 4 history at the D1 level, and it has not been a successful program. And so he's going into what's considered the basement, the bottom level program in the Big Ten, and he goes in there, and man, the challenges are there, and he comes in and does just amazing things. He walks in 2024 replacing Tom Allen, and he brings his key assistants with him. He brings his program with him. He implements it, and he is off to the races. It is unbelievable what he did in season 1. School record, 11 wins, first ever college football playoff berth for Indiana. And the team's only losses were to Ohio State, the eventual national championship, and to Notre Dame, the eventual runner-up. Unbelievable what he did. And then 2025 rolls around. And let's go back to 2024 for a second. He brings in 22 players from the transfer portal, with 13 of them coming with him from James Madison, including the starting quarterback that would start. And it works. He brings these guys in, they build a team, they win. And when you look at losing to Ohio State, eventual national championship, and they played them closer than the score would indicate. But they ran into a team with better talent, better players, more NFL players on their roster, and were just out physical and out athletes. And Ohio State was a very well coached team and a senior laden team. So he loses not because of being out coached, out schemed, but just the other team has better players, loses to Ohio State. Same thing with Notre Dame. Was he out coached in that game? No. Was he outmatched in terms of physical, strong athletes who were well coached? Yes. Notre Dame was just physically more dominant. And those are the only 2 teams he lost to. He lost to the national champion and the eventual runner-up. And Notre Dame was 11-1, and they had to play in South Bend in that game, and they lost. But unbelievable season. Just did any of us think they could repeat and do it again? I was very skeptical. I was not paying attention. I thought it was just they played a weak schedule, and when they ran into strong teams, they got beat. But I didn't realize how great a coach he is and how he was building a program to last. And then 2025 comes along, and surely it can't happen again. Surely it's a one-off. In Indiana, here we are. They go unbeaten regular season, Big Ten title, number 1 seed in the playoff. They are the only seeded team to win in the playoff. The other 3 seeded teams lost in the playoff. Here they are now, 15-0. They have wins over Ohio State in the Big Ten. They rolled up Alabama in the out in the Rose Bowl, and then they carved up the Ducks in the Peach Bowl. And here they are, ready to win a national championship, playing Miami, and they're probably going to close the deal. It is crazy. So how did the jump happen from 24 to 25? went portal heavy again. When he came in portal heavy, that's how he built the roster, is brought in a lot of portal guys that contribute immediately in 2024. And he goes portal heavy again in 2025. He adds key portal acquisitions such as Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Fernando Mendoza. He adds center Pat Coogan, who came over from Notre Dame, that was the runner-up, to anchor his line. They bring in more portal acquisitions, plus their players that they retained from the roster who came in the prior year through the portal, plus players they had recruited and were there, are all developing, getting better. They're in year 2 under the Cignetti system. These portal acquisitions fit in seamlessly. He coaches them up, gets them into a well-oiled machine, and here they are, 15-0. His team is executed at a high level, game in and game out, play after play. They're brilliantly coached on both sides of the ball. They have older, junior, senior, fifth-year players. They're experienced, and it's blended. And his brilliance is not only bringing in players that have proven productivity, but he's not bringing in divas. He's not bringing in me-first guys that are going to disrupt team chemistry. He has to have guys that want to be a part of a team, want to sacrifice to be a part of a team, don't care about their numbers, don't care. They care about winning and making winning plays and getting better and doing their job. It is just an amazing thing. So let's talk about it. Now that we're on the precipice of Curt Cignetti going undefeated, winning his first national championship, getting that formal recognition as the best coach in college football. Here we are. What's happening? How is this? What is Cignetti known for? We talked about it in part 1, but we're going to revisit it. He builds disciplined, high accountability cultures, smart recruiting and talent evaluation. He finds undervalued talents and leverages the transfer portal effectively to find players that are productive, that he knows can come and make an impact immediately. He's not looking for talented players that are not productive, that he can change their mindset and get them to be productive. He wants guys that not only are talented, but are productive, proven, disciplined team guys. He balances strategic preparation with player development and physical play. If you've got great schemes, but your players can't execute, it doesn't matter. If you've got great schemes, but the players don't have the talent to execute what you've schemed up, it doesn't matter. So you got to have developed players, you've got to play physical, and then you've got to be prepared and be able to execute what's being asked. So running plays that you can't execute makes zero sense. And he understands that from the ground up. So here's the Indiana transformation and what happened. Indiana, when he came in, became a disciplined, physical, and confident team. They started winning immediately, which is it's unbelievable what he did in year 1. Year 2 is amazing. Year 1 is unbelievable. They went from being a CFP participant in 24 to being Big Ten Conference champion in 2025, being in the number 1 seed in the playoffs in 2025, and here they are on the championship game. It wasn't magic. It seems like it was magical, but it wasn't, because he was 40 years in the making, preparing for this day to come into Indiana and to just unleash his program, to unleash his way of doing things, his coaching, his style of building a roster, all of that. And his program is built on alignment with the administration, the staff, the roster, expectations, pulling in the same direction. Comes in, he upgrades the roster, brings in his coaches that have been with him for a long time. So he's got a seasoned staff that understands his way. They bought into it, and they're off to the races. What makes Cignetti different, or what makes him unique? What is it? His program is rooted in standards, clear standards, and upholding those standards. If players don't uphold those standards, they're going to wash out. It is rooted in player development. The little things matter. Teaching them proper technique, proper footwork, proper alignment, proper execution, and then developing those players to get stronger, faster, more athletic, and then being accountable. Mistakes are corrected, they're not excused. You have to learn from your mistakes and get better and not repeat those mistakes. And that was key. And that's what I love about him is he wants to make his players better. He wants to make them as close to perfect as possible. And it starts with the little things, with footwork, stance, alignment, doing your job, knowing what your job is, execution, all of that. It is amazing. And then cultural consistency in that the program will look the same in year 5 as it does year 1, but it will just be more established, more embedded, and everybody will get with it. So here's Cignetti's rules and clarity of standard. Really important to understand because these things are why Indiana is so good, such a great program, and why they're winning and why everybody else is scratching their heads. He wants to eliminate ambiguity. Players know exactly what he expects, what winning behavior looks like. He focuses on effort, preparation, and accountability, and those are non-negotiable. Divas are not tolerated. He's not afraid to have guys leave the program if they're not going to get with the program. So culture is enforced daily, not occasionally. And he does not want me first guys. He wants team first guys. So he wants guys that are going to come in and buy in and work and grow and develop and execute and become better, stronger football players. So that and this speaks a lot. When you look at this, he wants players that are going to buy in, and he expects some players to leave, and particularly early in his tenure, because he knows that not everybody's going to buy in and not everybody's willing to do what he asked them to do day in and day out. So the result is buy-in happens fast because expectations are unmistakable. Well, what are those things? Culture before scheme. Unlike coaches who lead with playbook, Cignetti thinks behavior has to be established first, and players need to behave properly. And you need to get discipline and physicality as well from those players, and that's fundamental. And then once you're getting the players buying in and being disciplined, being physical, and doing the things you're asked, then you can teach them the schemes that you need. So mistakes are corrected daily. They're not massaged. They're part of the accountability process. Leadership is earned through consistency, not seniority. The leaders are those that produce and that day in and day out do what is asked of them, not just have hung around for a long time, but have not produced. And only after the culture stabilizes does the scheme fully expand. And what that means is players have to be bought in and teachable, coachable, and developed, and then you can teach them the more complicated aspects, but you've got to get that established. So this is the Cignetti way. It's amazing, and implementation of it has worked at every stop where he's been a head coach, and he is killing it at Alabama. So you get that implemented and the system doesn't collapse under pressure. The players don't collapse under pressure because they're pressured all the time, and they understand about resiliency and about execution and about each play having a life of its own. And you have to, once the play's over, you have to move the next play and be ready for that play. So that's where he is. So let's talk about in terms of players and how he's built the program. He's looking for competitive toughness. He's looking for coachability. He's looking for emotional maturity. And he is happy to take players that are overlooked due to size, due to ratings, recruiting hype, pedigree. He wants productive players. He wants players that produce, not that are just highly rated and viewed as talented. Building the roster before Indiana at places like James Madison, he had his roster filled with players who wanted to be developed and had no guarantee. He's not bringing in a player and going to guarantee them playing time. They have to earn it, and they have to develop. They have to get better. He's going to play the best players, but that means the best players that produce, that can execute, that can buy into his way. He's not going to play a player because they're a 5-star recruit and they're going to threaten to leave if they don't start. That isn't happening. He won't recruit those players, and he'll tell them to leave if that happens. So his teams, when they're winning, tend to be older, tougher, and more cohesive, that can outperform teams like Alabama that had a lot of talent, but they weren't as well coached, they weren't as disciplined, they weren't as fundamentally sound, and they beat their pants off. They did the same thing to Oregon. And you could just see the difference in execution. You could see the difference in productivity, in doing your job, not making mistakes, not committing penalties, and being tough and focused play after play. And it was glaring in the playoff in those 2 wins. We'll see what happens against Miami. I think they're going to win, but we'll see what happens there. Then player development is a competitive weapon for Cignetti. Really important to understand is that he knows he's got to get his players in, and then he's got to get them to their highest possible level of production and develop them and get the most out of their talents. So he has an emphasis over year physical development, incremental role growth, rather than instant stardom. If you can't come in and produce and you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to play. And you're going to have to earn that opportunity through demonstration and practice, and then demonstration in games that you can handle what's being asked and that you can produce, not just that you have the potential. So potential doesn't matter. Talent doesn't matter. It's production that matters. So the experience matters, not just being a senior. His teams are rarely young and fragile. They tend to be older, more experienced, and he keeps developing that way. So in this day and age of the portal, that's allowed him to bring in productive, experienced players and have players that, even though they hadn't played at Indiana before, they knew college football and they knew how to play and they knew how to execute. And then he molded them into a cohesive unit that could win and win big. So here's the results of his process. His teams have strength and composure in the late season. Look at the win against Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. Look at how they rolled over Alabama, how they rolled over Oregon. And these were supposed to be talented teams, and they killed them. Neither one of those games were competitive, and it was sheer domination. And then schematically with his programs, he wants there to be clarity and execution. He doesn't want to run a bunch of complex plays that can't be executed. He wants to run plays that can be executed perfectly over and over again. And when you call that play and run that play, you have confidence that every single person on the field knows what to do, what their role is, and that they execute it. And so they are a well-oiled machine. It is amazing. He doesn't win with offensive wizardry or defensive wizardry. He is an offensive coach. He understands offense, but he's not looking to just have some wild schemes and some trickery to win. He wants to win play in and play out with the fundamentals. They'll dial up some plays and they'll see if they can catch you. But it's after well-designed, well-thought-out execution of plays over and over again that set up those plays where they can beat you with big chunk plays. But he is not looking to just come in here like a Lincoln Riley who's all about offense and running offense. That is not what they do. And then don't care about defense. He cares about all 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, special teams. They're buttoned up all the way around. They're sound, and they do it. He also believes in the physical line of scrimmage and winning at the line of scrimmage. His defense tackle and communicate. We talked about that, about how well they tackle, how fundamentally sound they are. Same thing on offense. And then he wants his offense to avoid mistakes. And then overall as a team, no bad penalties, no big mistakes. Don't beat yourselves. Do all the little things right so that you're in position to win. And then finally, his schemes are adaptable, but his identity as a team is fixed in terms of tough, disciplined, and situationally found, and he has delivered that. So his turnarounds have been fast everywhere. He wins everywhere, and he wins big fast. It's I win, Google me. That's true. At every stop, the turnaround began in year 1, and he wins early if possible, and he wins and builds those programs, and he's done it. So you can't doubt the guy. if he has the right resources in the right situation, he is an unbelievable coach, and it's crazy what he's done. And that's that you can just see it all the way around in terms of building his teams and winning. Now, staff alignment and accountability, and this could be a big problem for Indiana over the next 5 to 10 years. If Cignetti's there for 10 to 15 years, being 64, could he be there 10 years? Yes. Is he going to be there 15 years? Probably not, but we'll see. But this will be a big challenge for him. But his assistants are chosen carefully and held to the same standard as players. He focuses on teaching over recruiting. He focuses on development over excuses. Loyalty flows downward from him to them, not upward. If the assistants can't teach and can't enforce standards, they're out of there. He wants a unified staff, and he wants them all bought in and pulling in the same direction and focused on the work. So where are we now with Indiana? Indiana plays Miami Monday night for the championship. They're poised to go 16-0, win their first national championship. Quickest rise of a program ever from irrelevant. They were an irrelevant college afterthought to probably national champion Monday night. Did it in 2 years. Quickest rebuild ever. And I don't even know it's a rebuild, because a rebuild assumes you had a good program. It went into disrepair and then you rebuild it. I would say quickest turnaround from dumpster fire to very bad program into an elite program. And he did it in 2 years. It is crazy. He's at the top of his profession. Never seen anything like it. I don't think it's repeatable. I think Cignetti's that great. I think his coaching staff is great. His program's great. It all came together at the right time. I don't think anyone else is ever going to be able to do what he did at an Indiana type program and make them nationally relevant and into a national champion in 2 years. It's crazy. And then what happens? Can Cignetti do it again year after year? And in the future, can he win 10 games or more consistently year after year? Can he make the CFP? Can he make the playoffs year after year? Can he win more national championships? Is Indiana built to last? Those are the questions. I think Indiana is built to last. I think they can win year after year as long as Cignetti's there. He's going to have challenges for sure. He's got a lot of seniors, a lot of players that'll go to the NFL. But he's got a great portal class coming in. His recruiting class, he's doesn't have a top 5 high school recruiting class, but he's not focused on that. So I think Indiana will be back next year. Now, I'm going to assume they're going to beat Miami and win their first national championship. I think as long as Cignetti's here, this program's built to last, built to stay. But here are the challenges. Can you reload year after year with players graduating and leaving to go to the NFL? And here's the bigger challenge. What happens when Bryant Haynes gets hired as a head coach? What happens when Mike Shanahan gets hired as a head coach? How's he going to be able to handle that staff churn? Saban did it brilliantly, but he definitely, his coaching process was disrupted because he had to go out and replace assistants all the time as people would hire. Cignetti was on his staff. Look at him now. Kirby Smart on his staff. Look at him now. Dan Lanning on his staff. Look at him now. Mario Cristobal for Miami on his staff. Look at him now. So Cignetti's going to have to deal with that because everybody's going to want a piece of the Cignetti way, going to want a piece of the Cignetti magic. His coaches are going to be hired with the hope that they can do what Cignetti did at Indiana at their program. They're going to get opportunities. He's going to have to manage that churn, that staff churn, as well as player churn. And those are going to be the biggest challenges to making the CFP year after year and to being a team that wins 10 plus wins year after year. It's going to be a real challenge. It's an amazing story. The rise of Cignetti in Indiana, amazing story, came out of nowhere. And because I'm a Bamature, because I focus on watching Alabama and the SEC, I didn't pay as much attention to it as I should have. Got my attention now. It's what he's done for 4 years, 40 years as an assistant, as a D2 coach, and as a D1 coach. He gets his D1 Power 4 job, instant success. truly a story that would make a great movie, a Hollywood type story with a potential Hollywood ending. Cignetti's the best coach in college. Let's see how the story plays out on Monday night and beyond. Coach Cignetti, I salute you. I will be watching. All right, that's it for this episode of the Bamateur Hour, where we focused on Curt Cignetti and his story. I think there's a lot Alabama needs to learn from this. If when they go to hire their next coach, they need to get someone who is steeped in the Cignetti way, a Cignetti assistant, or someone that's been under Cignetti and has proven that he can win and has all the things that Cignetti has. Alabama needs to emulate what they're doing that they're not currently doing in their program and improve that. All right, that's it. That's all for this episode. God bless and roll Tide.